So today on the channel, we're going to show you the one coverage adjustment you can make that shuts down the top 4 routes in Madden 25. And for those that don't know what routes we're talking about the pivot return route, the whip pattern, the post, and the corner route. These are the staple routes of every offense that you'll face online in Madden, and we're going to be breaking down the adjustment that you can use on any outside linebacker, defensive end, or slot corner in any defense in the game that you wish to shut this down. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, hit that notification bell, get out your notepad and pen, and let's get after it. It should be no secret to you at this point that these routes that I just named are the routes that make every offense go in Madden 25. The whip route and the pivot route have been one of the most prominent routes in the game because they get open against zone underneath for checkdowns and they tend to beat man coverage. But there is a zone in the game that plays a little bit of both, and that is called the seam flat adjustment. Now, I'm not here to teach you the entirety of cover 3 match in this video, but I am going to say that if you guys want to find plays that have stock seam flats in it, you'll want to take a look at any cover 3 play in the game where the flat zones are kind of a light pinkish color. But that's okay if you don't necessarily have a play in your formation where that is possible. I can't really think of any defenses off the top of my head where you don't have at least one play with seam flats. You can still hot route them on the field. So to illustrate this, we're going to play out of strictly cover 2 here in this breakdown. I've done so much content on this one play and how to beat it this year on the channel. So again, make sure you guys, if you struggle with this play as a whole, you go back and watch some of the older videos here. We're going to be focusing specifically on DJ Moore on the return pivot route here. This is a route that traditionally is so good at beating regular stock man-to-man. If I were to put Adderley in man-to-man on this player, you're going to see that he's going to fry him and get open over the middle. It's a simple check down, and this is why this route is so good. Players will kind of surround this route with corners and posts and streaks, and then they'll throw this as their check down when you guard everything else. So we have to have an adjustment that takes this away that doesn't require our user to be there. Thus enters the seam flat adjustment. So as I mentioned in this video already, the seam flat adjustment, if you go into the individual adjustments for slot corners, outside linebackers, and defensive ends, the left analog stick up will change your player's assignment to a seam flat. This particular assignment will guard the second receiver in the formation if you were to number outside to in, which is traditionally going to be the slot receiver anyways. You're talking about a spread with only 2 receivers to a side. That's the player that's going to run pivots and whips anyways. So it's perfect for this. And it's also great for trips where the middle receiver is often the player that runs these. But what you're going to see here is that this single adjustment is going to shut down the return pivot route. You're in fact going to see him just run the route for the player. This is not open in the least. For whatever reason, this is the one man coverage technique that exists in Madden that doesn't get absolutely fried. You could try to play man-to-man and shade outside against a whip to the outside or inside against the pivot to the middle. It's not going to be nearly as consistent as what we see here with this particular breakdown. I think that for what it's worth, this technique of the seam flat is to play the low outside hip, so he gets there early, and this allows him to drive and run with this route as it breaks back over the middle, compared to some of the other animations in the game for man-to-man where they kind of get beat quick to the outside, they overcompensate, and then the second move over the middle gets open. You see right here that this route will not get open here when it returns back over the middle. So not only will it stop the pivot back over the middle, but the seam flat adjustment will also do a really good job on the zig pattern, also known as the whip. So this is an outside breaking route that you'll see. Again, this seam flat just basically bags it. You can't throw this. It's basically gonna operate as if it's like a hard flat, really. It just kind of jumps it in man-to-man, and you're not really going to be able to throw either of those 2 routes. And this is, again, the backbreaker pattern that so many Madden players rely on in this game. Now, the cool thing about this too is, like, let's say for instance, I wanted to run a zig over here to our tight end that's lined up in the slot. He is that second option here. I'm going to put him on this zig pattern, and you're going to see that if I go to this slot corner, bring up his adjustments, I can put him into a seam flat, and he'll be in a spot where he's going to be able to play this. So when I go and I snap this ball, watch how he basically smothers this route. You cannot throw it. It's going to be a pick to either side. So if you ever face someone that likes to run zigs or whips to both slot receivers, just put a couple seam flats on the field. You honestly could just call cover 3 match and have this accomplished without having to hot route. But it's a really, really simple adjustment. But that's not all the seam flat does. It actually shuts down the 2 best vertical patterns that also exist in Madden. And before I break those down, I want you guys to make sure that you check out my strategy website, gridirongameplans.gg. Open in 2020, Gridiron Game Plans is the #1 place to get better at competitive Madden. We break down in our vault updates the meta of the game, or the most effective tactics available that pro players use, why those whip routes work, why those pivot routes work, and most importantly, how to counter them. If this is the type of content that piques your interest, you're sure to love Gridiron Game Plans. For $9.95 a month, you guys unlock the entire website that includes all vault tips, over 160 since launch on Madden, over 170 since launch on college football. All offensive and defensive game plans included at no additional price. So everything is unlocked on the website, and that includes lab sessions inside our members only Discord every single Wednesday night. So make sure you guys check it out. Best deal in the tip space. Now let's talk about how to shut down corners and posts. So we have the check down game stopped, which is arguably the most important part of defending anything in this game. You got to be able to take away those routes that they expect you to use there. Now I'm going to show you guys how the seam flat adjustment will handle a post or a corner. So we're going to run DJ Moore here on a corner route. Again, I could go into this defense. This time I've chosen a cover 4. These are curl flats. I'm going to change these to a seam flat by hot routing Adderley into that role. Now he's relative to that second receiver. And if he goes vertical at all, he's going to shut down that route. So you're going to see right here with this corner route, he basically smothers it. You cannot throw this like you would against a standard cover 4. As you can kind of imagine, when you talk about a regular cover 4 defense, this is a route combo that you would be able to run against cover 4 hard flat, which is what most pro players tend to run online. But you're going to see right here that the seam flat adjustment is so much better because you have a player that will basically run with this player down the field and take away that throw, which is so incredibly useful. And not to mention, this also applies to a post pattern as well. So if I were to put the seam flat on the field here, he's going to end up matching that player. So basically we can kind of just let this happen. You're going to see Adderley runs with this route. There is one thing that you do have to be careful with a little bit here with post patterns. And I'll tell you that it's the wide side of the field versus the short side of the field that tends to give this a little bit of issue. And for what it's worth, this seam flat adjustment works against post routes as well. So if I snap this ball here, you're going to see DJ Moore is going to get manned up by this. The cool thing about this within a zone construct is that you can bracket this by having, you know, cover 4 on the other side. So you've got a zone, a deep zone that can help out on this. If there's one route that does an okay job against the seam flat, it might be the post pattern. But again, it's probably not going to kill you too much. Most players out here are not really going to consistently get post patterns open. And again, with the switch stick, it's a tough chore to actually throw them. So again, if I were to put A on a post here, you're going to see right here with a post and a return route in the middle of the field, I could actually go to this whole seam flat on both sides of the field. And what you're actually going to notice out of this is you're going to see that the whip on the left and also the post on the right are going to get shut down. And you can kind of just play like a weird little cover 2 style defense here with those individual adjustments. So I snap this ball, you're gonna see the pivot route on the left is smothered, the post on the right is smothered, you have it bracketed, even if there's any like tripping or whatever. This is a cool little defense that allows you to kind of utilize the seam flat and the things that make the seam flat great, but then not necessarily stay in a cover 3 match, because I know a lot of players don't necessarily feel super comfortable running in a stock match. Now, I've been showing this to you with just slot corners. I think those are the most ideal position on the field to run this with. But I will tell you that if you're ever in a situation where, let's say for instance, your opponent's at the end of a game and you know it's either a whip or a run play, and you find yourself in a situation where maybe you're in a 3-4 against a heavy run, or a formation where they could present the threat of running the ball against you, this is a fine option as well. So you'll see here that if I were to, against this whip route over the middle, change this player right here to the seam flat, you'll see that Jimmy Graham will do a pretty decent job against that. So, you know, I can worry about the run. And then if they do run this whip route, you're going to see that Jimmy Graham actually does a good job on it. With the exception right there, they kind of stepped on each other's toes. Graham was actually guarding that pretty consistently there. So I'll run that again here, just kind of show you. Again, watch how Graham is basically not fooled by this route. The only thing you have to be careful with, obviously, is something crossing underneath. If they are tending to step on each other's toes, one of the things that I find to be really, really useful is to kind of widen out the alignment of the seam flat. That'll help with those animations where they bump into each other. You see here that this is not too bad. And then the one thing that you have to be careful with, obviously, is anything that's crossing from the other side, because the seam flat does match. This can leave the flat open on that side. So, if there's like a drag or something coming from the other side, just be careful that, you don't leave that flat exposed. But again, this is such a cool little assignment. Obviously, corners are going to do this job better than outside linebackers. Kind of goes without saying. But you can also put your defensive ends into this role. So one of the other things here, take a look here. I've got Peppers. I'm going to put a hard flat. So we just saw how we had that drag in the return route. You're going to see here how, look how Peppers smothers that route. And then we can have a hard flat out there that will take away that drag. So again, you could do this with an outside linebacker, a defensive end, or a nickel corner. So again, you've got 3 positions on the field that you can do this with. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you guys give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. I'll be back later this afternoon with a short, or tomorrow with a long form upload. Until then, this is Zan. Get in the lab and good luck.